One of our subscribers asked me if I would show how to do rocks underwater. Let's take a look at that one. I always try to resist giving formulas for anything because I think formulas are a bad idea. If you're painting by formula, meaning this is the way you do rocks underwater, that sort of formula, then that's going to restrict your experience because you're going to make all your rocks underwater look the same no matter what you're doing. So what I would rather show you is how to go about looking for what happens when water is flowing over rocks, and things that you can do to make that translation into your painting. So let's start with, I have 5 photographs here. All are rocks underwater, and different kinds of situations. So here we see that the rocks are under the water. We would guess here that they're in more or less in shade because we don't see a lot of glare. And so one thing that you would do if you're showing a really bright and sunny day or bright sunny situation, you would see glare, or like this, where we're seeing lots of blue. That's the sky reflecting the water. I have a suspicion this one might have been photoshopped just a little bit, but still the principle is there, where when the water is flowing smoothly, and there's a really the stream is exposed to the sky, we're going to have the sky reflecting. So you have the sky color then surrounding the rocks. Here you have a real close up. Once again, it seems to be more in shade, and we see the water's moving rapidly here because we see indications of little bubbles around the water. And then in this one, another sky situation, but we can see it more or less in the distance as it goes into the distance. We can see it's kind of cloudy. The water's kind of cloudy, so you see the rocks begin to disappear. And in this one, it's kind of a mixture of this one and some of the others, but this one shows relatively still water, and then we see there are rocks here that are not underwater, but the water is flowing around the rocks. So let's just take let's break this thing down into what we would look for. Now, look first of all, are you in a bright sunny day? Are you in the shade? Is it an overcast day? Because those things are going to affect how much or the way you see. Look for the value changes. What's in shadow and what's not in shadow. That's my favorite way to go about things. So let's start this. Let's start with a rock that's not underwater. This is just a little cartoon style demo. So I would say maybe start with a rock that's not underwater. If the sun is shining, let's say coming over in that direction, well then the shadow of the rock would be on this side. So that would be the shadow of the rock. The sun being coming from that direction, we might see here it's leaning a little bit more towards the light, and then we might see let's get this a little bit lighter. Then we might see then the top of that rock would be much lighter. Well, that's a flat square rock, but it's gives you an idea. Now, so when you're observing rocks, you observe where the shadow side is and where the light side is and what it's doing. So this would not be underwater. Now, how would we know if it's underwater? Then we look around the rock, and what is it doing? What's happening around the rock? So we can go back to our references here, and of course, these are just a few examples. There are millions and millions, oh well, maybe not millions, but dozens, let's say, of possibilities for how you might see rocks under the water, determined upon whether the water is flowing very fast or whether the water is relatively still. But let's say if we take a situation like this, the water too is relatively still, it's got a little bit of speed to it, so what do we see happening? Well, first of all, we see around or in between the rocks, we see sky, the color of the sky reflecting. And so we might see something like this, and then we'll see is that dark or is that light? So we would look for the area where the rock itself might be causing shadow in the water, and so on the shadow side of the rock, as it's throwing shadow and relating, we're seeing through the water the shadow of the rock. The shadow side of the rock then might be very dark like that underwater. It may be even darker than that underwater. Now, I'm not making a prescription. I'm telling you, I'm suggesting to you what to look for. So you can look for the shadow where you can see it right in here too. You can look for where a rock is in shadow. Where the light is going to throw a shadow in the water itself. And so you're going to see that darker there where it's in shadow. And then you're going to see around it, you can look at that in here too. And I'm just assuming here that the water is reflecting the color of the sky. You can see around it where the rock is not in shadow, it's going to be lighter. Or where it doesn't fall in shadow, but you will see that the water will take on pretty much the same value as where of the side of the rock. So if the rock is not in shadow over here, the water is going to be reflecting that. It's going to take on that value of not in shadow. Here in shadow, it's going to be taking on the reflection of that. And then if you look at what's on the other side, you're going to see the water reflecting onto the surface. And so then this would pretty much show as pretty much the same value. If you look right in here, you can see that. If you look right in here, you can see that the value of the water is going to be pretty much the same value as the side of the rock that it's on. And let's take this, I'll get that just a little bit lighter on the lighter side as the water, and you see I still haven't got the water flowing on top of the rock. So say that's what the water is doing that. And now we might say the water is moving. Now what we can do, that still, the rock is still sitting out of the water. What we will do now is we will scumble that water. Scumble means that you are layering. Put one layer of paint on top of the other, and when the layer of paint is very wet, you layer it by turning the brush flat. Now, if the water's moving, you already see a little bit of your water's moving. You're going to see something of the shape of the rock beginning to move with it. You'll see something of the color of the water reflecting on the rock. You see now the rock begins to be distorted. And then, let's get this just a little bit darker right in here. There we go, right in there. We begin to see that somewhat distorted. And we begin to, now we have the feeling that the rock is underwater. So when it goes underwater, it's going to lose its edges. The edges are going to become more diffused. It's going to, depending on how much the water is moving, if the water is moving sort of moderately slow, it's going to pick up the color of the sky or the color of whatever is reflecting in it. So those are some clues for you to look for. I would suggest that you might start out by practicing a little exercise such as I did here. Let's give that just a little bit. A little bit of downward stroke like that to make that feel a little bit more like water. All right. And so I suggest that you observe. Go out and look. Go out to creeks, rivers, wherever there's rocks, wherever you can see, wherever it's shallow enough so that you can see the rocks under the water. Observe. Describe to yourself not rocks underwater, but switch your attention from that. Observe the values. Observe the colors within those values, and observe what they are doing, how they're interacting with each other. And if you take that observation and commit it to paint, then you will know how to do rocks underwater, wherever you see them, whatever they're doing. If you enjoyed this quick tip, if you found it helpful, why not check out our full-length videos on DianeMize.com. We have hundreds of full-length videos that guide you through problem solving such as this. And there's your quick tip.